AnxietyCenter.com.
First, I want to comment that was very good to listen to, because a lot of the things you said, I could have been saying the exact same things about. I've had a contact thing, a dental thing, and I'll question like, oh my gosh, did something get messed up? And I think what I started realizing for me is it came that I was scared of making a wrong decision and that I would really, really mess up or do something that would harm me. And like Jim was talking about, it also is, when you get raised to kind of think this is right, this is wrong, and this, if you do this, it'll turn out okay, and if you do this, it'll turn out wrong. So that's one thing I noticed about your whole story. And then the second thing, I guess something that I'd kind of like to ask you about is, and you kind of touched on this, feeling these pains or things. My thing now is a weird pain, shortness of breath thing that has kind of been going on for a while. And it happens a lot at night. It will wake me up. So I go, well, that's weird. It happens at night. It has to be physical. But I've had a lot of tests done now, and they always tell me, you look like such a healthy person, like you do. And then, so there's that part of it. How do I get past that? And then the other part is, I feel like people get frustrated with me, like, oh my gosh, here she goes again. She's talking about that. And then I feel so bad and frustrated that they're almost telling me like it's not real.
Yes. Both of those are pretty common. I'll respond to the first point that you raised about fear of making a wrong decision. That is so common for anxious people. It often stems from coming from a background where our parents made a big deal about our mistakes. I can, cite that for myself because that's what I grew up in. Every questionable decision was, well, you could, that could have hurt you, or you could have been killed there. What are you thinking? Or how could you do something so stupid? It wasn't. They weren't giving me the freedom to make my choices. When I made a choice, I paid for it emotionally and sometimes physically by my dad. So we just learned that, well, you don't want to be making a bad decision because the worst thing can happen. So we put extra pressure on ourselves to try not to make those. And that's not a bad thing in itself. It turns into a bad thing when we become anxious about it, because one of the facts that I had to reconcile for myself over the years was, we're going to make mistakes. We're not perfect. If we had better information, we probably wouldn't make that decision. But at the time, that's all we had. And so I've learned to give myself grace for wrong decisions and mistakes. Rather than having the old tape playing saying, oh, I told you, shouldn't have done that. You would have been out of this problem. I said, you know what? I made the best choice I could at the time, and this is how it ended up. Oh, well, that's how it is. And I just did one the other day, in fact, something that I normally don't do. We have a newish vehicle. It has one of those automatic hatch that opens up at the back. When the hatch is open, it doesn't fit inside the garage. And so when we go to the grocery store, we, take our stuff out on the driveway. When it's unloaded, we, put the hatch down and drive into the garage. Well, the other day, we were distracted with this whole COVID thing. We go through a bit of a process of making sure all the things are clean. And there was a neighbor coming down who wanted to talk. So I wanted to get my vehicle in the garage. Without thinking, I drove into the garage. Well, guess what? The hatch was open. I never do that. Fortunately, and I, give God praise for this, when I opened up the hatch, it didn't go high enough. I stopped it before it got to its full height. So when I pulled into the garage, I had about an inch space, so it never occurred any damage. And I stopped and I said, Jim, what are you doing? You never do stuff like this. But I had to offer myself some grace. There was extenuating circumstances. Yes, it was a mistake. Oh, well, it's over. Fortunately, things didn't, negative happen. But we're human. We're going to make those kind of things. And so we want to offer ourselves grace. In the past, I would have berated myself for weeks over that mistake. But I've learned to say, you know what, that's just how it is, and we move on. Marilyn and I both have made, mistakes, not because of deliberate mistakes, but because we were distracted or we were in a hurry or something or other. So we've learned to offer each other, grace. We don't berate each other for making mistakes. And this is where we want to get to, is recognize we are human. We're going to make them. And so we want to offer ourselves grace. We can learn from, okay, what are we going to learn next time? Well, I came up with a list of things that I'm going to do as a checklist before I drive into the garage next time. All right, fair enough. But then I move on. So dealing with the fear of making a wrong decision, we want to go after it again cognitively by offering ourselves grace. We're human. We're going to do it. Oh, well, what can I learn? And then move on. So that's number one. So then after that is coming to the symptoms in the middle of the night. Now, you said you had pain and shortness of breath. Is it chest pain or is it a different pain?
It's a very strange thing when I tell doctors, they kind of look at me like you're strange because it's like this tight rope running throughout my body. It almost runs all the way from under my ribs down to my upper thigh, and I can't even lay in a certain position because this muscle gets so tight.
Right.
It's like one muscle is just so tight. And I do know when I used to stress, I would like tense up on my left side and I could physically feel it. And then it got to the point where it just got tighter and tighter and deeper in my body. So it's kind of one of those things where I explain it and they're just like, that doesn't make any sense. Or we've run tests on you. We don't physically see anything, but I can definitely tell the muscle is tight. So I will wake up and, I'll think, oh, this has to be physical. And then what I end up doing about all the decision thinking is I run down these things like, oh, well, I tried that acupuncture treatment. I wonder if that messed something up now. Or I tried taking that herbal thing, I wonder if that messed me up or whatever. And then I go down this panic almost like, oh my gosh, this is going to get worse or it's really bad. And I think that might be what's delaying me in getting better, but it's really hard for me to accept at the time. That's okay. This is just a stress thing. They haven't found anything wrong. Do you think that could be what is delaying me?
It could be. Inner muscle tension or body tension is very common for high stress. And if we're worried about it, we just add to the mix. And so sometimes it can persist for as long as we're worrying about it. And when we go for medical tests, they aren't going to find it because, what we deal with in terms of symptoms are really hard to find from a medical perspective. But we feel them. And so the tension you're feeling, it's definitely physical because we don't imagine tension that's not there. But that tension is probably, stress related if it's, we've had medical tests done and they can't find anything. Again, when we super anxious, sometimes our stomach muscles just clamp right down. And as well as the chest muscles. The chest muscles clamp down. That's why we have a hard time breathing. And sometimes when the body's hyperstimulated, it can change how the body manages respiration. So we can be feeling completely relaxed and loose and yet still have, shortness of breath, which is a very common symptom. Being woken up in the middle of the night, I would imagine it's probably as you're coming out of a sleep cycle and into the next one when you wake up from that. Because typically what happens when you get into a deep, rested period, all the body's muscles will relax. And so you'll be super relaxed. But as the body transitions from one sleep cycle to the next, it becomes somewhat conscious. And that's when things usually tense up. And it's that transition is where we're usually woken up. Now, I'll qualify that by saying unless your sleep has been off regularly and you're getting, short hours of sleep each night, sometimes you don't even get into those deeper stages. So it can come up at any time. But typically it's during the transition. So when you are woken up, can you tell me approximately what time of night that happens?
Well, actually, it is what you said. My sleep has been disrupted regularly for the last year. This started about a year and a half ago, and I definitely think that because I haven't been getting good, calm, comfortable rest, that's also exasperating this.
Yeah.
And then also, I think triggering into it is the fact that when I'm worrying about it, and then if I start to get concerned or freak out and panic, I think you're looking for that reassurance. And there's the other thing of kind of like, okay, it's nothing, this is just your imagination. Or even once some people come around to understand that it's stress, which talking about family members here a little bit, that kind of makes me feel a little crazy because you're feeling it, but it's almost like you're not, you're being told you don't, or kind of they don't understand it. And then it's, and then that causes you frustration too. And then I'm wondering if that frustration is actually feeding into me being like, I don't want to be in this situation. And that's tensing me.
Yeah. It can be all of those. And I certainly
Okay.
understand when you say family members, when you say something that's going on with you and they say, well, no, it's not, it's not true or whatever. You're just imagining it's all in your
Right.
head. Used to hear that so many times when I was dealing with anxiety disorder. Oh, it's all in your head, don't worry about it. Complain about tunnel vision. I'm thinking, well, I can barely see, it's the side of my, oh, you're just imagining that. It's like, no, I'm not. I can see and I can't see. So in these cases, we just have to really offer them grace. They just don't understand what anxiety can do to a body. Anybody that's been down a hyperstimulation road will agree with you. Yeah, it can do some pretty bizarre things, and it's not imaginary. They're there. It's just that, no one else can see them. And that's probably one of the challenges when we deal with anxiety disorders, that it's not like we have a bruise or open sore on us that they can see. Our symptoms are inside of us, and they're often nervous system related, muscle tension, and some of the other things that go on. So people can't see that. We look fine on the outside, so they're immediately going to dismiss it as if everything, we'd be crazy or whatever. But this is what hyperstimulation does. So you want to come to a place within yourself to say, okay, I'm not imagining this. This is what's happening. My body is hyperstimulated. Job number one for me is to gear this body down. And since you say your sleep is off, well, the lack of sleep itself can keep the body geared up. Because you know what happens? If you've read our sleep section, when we don't sleep long enough, the body increases its cortisol. It does that to compensate for us being tired. And the other thing is, it increases cortisol more during the evening hours when we're supposed to be getting, gearing down, getting ready to sleep. That's just what the body does to compensate. So, each day that our sleep is off track, the body increases cortisol. Of course, cortisol keeps our hyperstimulation going. So we get into that cycle of not being able to sleep. We feel awful. We want to sleep, can't sleep. Or when we go to sleep, we wake up right away, so we get all that stuff going on. But fortunately, we can turn this all around by just focusing on resting the body. Job number one, only job you need to focus on. How am I going to rest the body now? And what can I do today to teach the body to be calmer? Well, I may not be able to sleep tonight or have a good sleep tonight because my body is still wired from this cortisol. My job is just to continue to train it each day to be calmer day after day after day. And eventually it gets to a place where we can start to have some resemblances of good sleep. It may not be perfect, and we might get one good sleep one night and might be off the next. But as we keep persevering with rest, regular deep relaxation, rest each day, the body eventually starts to gear down, stops producing the high level of cortisol, and eventually we can get back to a regular sleep pattern, which then will help you to settle as well. So disrupted sleep is going to challenge you at the moment. So again, job one is getting your rest on track so your sleep can come back.
So if I'm hearing you right, my number one focus should be just focusing on that instead of the next day getting up and then saying, okay, let me look one more time at what's a natural supplement or what's something else I could take to help me get through this. I should really just accept, or for a lack of a better way to say it, like my number one focus should really just be, okay, I'm not getting the amount of sleep I want right now. Is that what I should do for the first line of treatment for this whole thing?
If I were you, yes, I would focus primarily
Okay.
on getting rest, because all of the nutrients and things that may be helpful to a very small degree, some herbal remedies or things we can take can actually be sending us in the wrong direction, because there's a lot more to supplementation than a lot of people realize. And I'm hoping to have Liliana come on so she can talk about all the various things we need to consider before we supplement. She's been away on holidays, and we're trying to arrange a Zoom conference. So once that's up, I think you'll see that, trying to take things for anxiety is kind of futile, because you could actually be making things worse and not even realize it. And just because one article says this is really good for anxiety doesn't mean it's going to be good for you, especially based on the present situation and where your body is at. Because stress can change the body's chemical makeup and how it functions. And so just by giving it something that might have worked for someone may not work for us. So that's pretty much a waste of time right now. But since all of your symptoms are hyperstimulation related, the quickest remedy for hyperstimulation is rest, giving the body sufficient rest so that the stimulation level can come down. We say reduce stress. Well, that's important because we don't want to be stressing about things while we're trying to get the body back on track, because that stress produces hormones and kind of counterproductive to recovery. But if we're able to just focus on calming the body down, sitting in the backyard, listening to nature, if you like, or painting, things that you love to do, all of those will help to calm the nervous system, because stimulation is our problem. That's what we want to change. We want to reduce the body's level of stimulation so that hormones and glutamate can change and all these other chemistries can come back into line so we can feel better again. So that's what I would suggest you do is passively accept how you're feeling right now. All of us have to do that. We don't like how we feel, and it often takes months of work to notice some difference. But if we passively accept how we feel, not running out trying to find all these different solutions, but just say, okay, I'm going to rest, the body will get back on track eventually, and you'll feel much better.
I think a good relaxation technique as well. Do you, Jim? Taking time in the day to learn how to breathe properly, because I think all of those of us with anxiety tend to over-breathe. Once you get into a situation of breathing wrongly, that can affect you've got intercostal muscles that go all the way around. There is a condition called costochondritis, which is muscles, but it can cause great pain. I mean, if you press on those areas very often, you will feel the pain. But it affects your breathing, and your breathing affects it. So it's a vicious cycle, really. But I think a good relaxation technique where you can slow your breathing down and realize that, oh, yeah, I think if I don't breathe right, then I might get that pain, and it's annoying, but that's all it is doing it. Then I think that might also help you as well a bit.
Yep. Okay. Yep. Yeah. I found that I'm kind of a overanalyzer, and I did go down that path for a while of the breathing. And then when I would feel something, it would make me worry more. I even posted a question one time about like trying to take a deep breath is freaking me out because I'll feel something. So I was like, okay, don't focus too much on it, because then I started to freak out even about, oh gosh, now I'm not breathing deep enough.
Yeah.
No, it's because you've got your diaphragm, and then you've got all your intercostal muscles, and they're all joined around your ribs, and it protects the whole inside organs. So once you're taking a deep breath in, you will feel it.
Yep.
And the more you worry about feeling it, you'll feel it even more, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And we don't want to focus on deep breathing, because deep breathing is not right for us. We want to focus on relaxed breathing and breathing from the diaphragm or the belly. A lot of anxious people breathe from the chest. We want to breathe from the belly, because when we do that, it stimulates the vagus nerve, which calms the body. Another thing too.
And you're right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're right, because you said something about our stomach muscles tight, and I had one doctor tell me your stomach muscles are so tight, and I said I can't get them to relax.
Yes, yeah, yeah. And this is where regular deep relaxation, if you do a technique for 20 minutes, maybe 2 times a day, as we do relax, the body does learn how to relax again, and will release those tight muscles. So in this case, we're deliberately teaching the body to be more relaxed. A lot of times too, anxious people will walk around really stiff, so we want to learn to make our bodies feel heavy to the floor so that the muscles release. Another thing too to keep in mind is a lot of anxious people don't drink enough water. Dehydration affects the body in so many ways. We have an article about that we posted recently. Well, if you're going to the bathroom and your urine is yellow, you don't have enough water. Being well hydrated is super important. Now, we don't recommend overhydrating either. Some doctors recommend 2 to 3 liters of water a day, which I think is overkill. I like to go by what Liliana recommends is drink until your urine is almost clear. Then your body's sufficiently hydrated. But keeping yourself well hydrated is also good. But certainly focusing on reducing stimulation. So our symptoms are coming from hyperstimulation, overstimulation. If we don't want symptoms, we need to reduce the body's level of stimulation, and that takes place over time, and sometimes a great deal of time, because we're so geared up. We don't even realize how geared up we are until we start teaching the body to be calmer and calmer. But as we do, as the stimulation returns to a normal level, it stops sending symptoms. So that's what we want to do. Job number 1 always is getting our stimulation down. Now that doesn't mean, sitting in a vegetative state all day long in the backyard. It means, and we can still live our lives normally, but we want to build in more rest periods. Another way to do this too is if we have stressful events coming up that we have to, go to. Sometimes people find interacting with people stressful, especially if you're an introvert. And if if you have a big family gathering that everybody wants you to be there and you want to be there yourself, but it's going to be stressful, take that in consideration. Make sure the days, 2 or 3 days before, and you're giving yourself lots of relaxation. And then when the event is done, make sure you give yourself 2 or 3 days of, building in more relaxation than you normally would to compensate. So it's learning where our stressors are, learning what to do to get the body back on track, and then taking the time to do that. A lot of times anxious people don't take the time for their body. This is what we have to learn to do. We have to learn to balance it. Good business managers always take sufficient holidays, and they do that because a lot of times they're under high stress, but they know how to balance it by taking holidays. Whereas anxious people, especially people who don't want to make a mistake or place a high value on performance, we don't give ourselves that opportunity. We just keep going and going and going and going and going and going. The body can't keep up, so learning to be good stress managers is good. Taking frequent rest breaks is the best.
Well, it's interesting because guess when this all came about was actually, I used to be go, go, go. And it was at a period in my life that was children leaving for college, husband not working anymore, that everything slowed down. That's when this all surfaced.
Yes.
having actually more time to relax. And then I would notice sensations and I'd focus on the things more. And I could even relate to the first discussion we had where you say, then you start stepping back from everything. And in some ways that made me feel worse because I had more time to focus on it and worry about it. And I almost felt worse from that.
Yeah. And that's really common. In fact, we have a number of pieces at the website about, I'm starting to do recovery strategies. Why do I feel way worse? Well, that's because we go so much. We're so used to the adrenaline pumping and running all day long. We don't notice the symptoms. So when we take time off, that's when we really notice how wired the body is. And if we're worried, guess what? Oh, what's this now? How come that's now? How come this isn't going away? Oh my gosh, what's all this about? And what do I have to do to fix this? And we just run down that trail. We keep the body wired in the wrong direction now. Instead of giving the body time to gear down and rest so that we can feel better, we just pick up with worry, where our stress left off, and we run with it. So do you see how we can keep going there, right?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's getting ingrained in my head. It's so funny because I logically know it all. And I've heard other people on the Skype calls say this. I logically know and I understand and I read all the material and I'm such a student of this too. But then when it comes down to it being like deep in my thinking, my old habits or my upbringing or something just like takes over. And I find it's like a constant battle.
Yeah. And a lot of us don't know how to relax. Relax is foreign. We go for so long and for so hard. We just think, when it comes time to relax, I'm going to give myself an afternoon and I'm good. Whereas sometimes we need weeks of relaxation before we can really enjoy it. In fact, one of our clients was so wired, had to take time off of work. Just could not stand any kind of pressure. It took almost 5 weeks of holidays and rest just for that client to feel kind of better again. That's how long it took for that body to settle down. But as the body settled down, it's like, wow, I'd never really felt this way in a long time. I should have done this years ago. But so that's something we have to keep in mind. This way, rest and relaxation is an important part of living a healthy lifestyle.
Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. Like you said, I guess it's just the time.
Yeah. And it has to be a priority because if the body's symptomatic, it means it is hyperstimulated, period. So we want to relax the body enough so that we're not feeling symptoms, that we can carry on our day and feel good about our day. The other thing that changes too is that our attitude changes. When our body's stressed, we have a tendency to think negatively. When the body's relaxed and calmed down, we have really wonderful and pleasing thoughts because the body can access the pleasure centers. So that's why it's so important we put such a heavy focus on relaxing, passively accepting, deep relaxation, resting, giving yourself enough time to sleep. So helpful in recovering from hyperstimulation.
And with the acceptance, would you say that would also be like, I just have to say like this is okay. I mean, I see it as like, oh, it's still there. I have to just be like, this is okay. It's going to be there till it's going to be there. I mean, I guess that is what I have to say because I read it in your material, but that's like the key to it constantly. I have to constantly be doing that.
Yep, you bet. Because
Okay.
we see a marked difference between people who are able to, I understand it's foreign concept initially because we don't like discomfort. So it is, common for us to rebel against it and not want it and to wake up each day thinking, oh gosh, it's still here, But we have to get to that place, okay, it's still here. That means my body's still hyperstimulated. Fair enough. And we just get on with our day. Because when people come to that passive acceptance point and they use that, it really speeds up their recovery. But we see people struggle for years and years and years and years by saying, okay, I'm going to try this. Okay, I've tried it for 3 weeks. It's not working. There must be something wrong. I need to find this. And they go on a hunt, go on a search, go to another doctor, try another remedy. And they just do this, time and time and time again. Then they'll come back and say, okay, I explored all those options. I'm now going to start to accept this. And they do it for 3 weeks. Okay, it's not working. There must be, and they do the whole thing. And it cycles year after year after year. If they would just say, you know what, okay, this is hyperstimulation. I'm going to focus on this for months until I feel better. That's all I'm going to do. I'm not going to question it. I'm not going to say what's wrong. Just going to do that. They get better. So that's why we put such heavy emphasis on passive acceptance. We need to accept, how, the body feels until it feels better, because it's not going to feel better right away. It's impossible. So we have to do the work up front so we can feel better down the road. And in the meantime, we have to accept that this is just how it is.
Okay. Actually, that's really helpful because you just described me. So it's kind of an impatience thing to some, for us people that are trying to control it. And I'm trying to do everything right. I'm drinking enough water. I'm trying to get sleep. I'm trying to do this. And then I go, it didn't work. Oh, I better go to this doctor and check it out. And that's what I do. Or I'll go try acupuncture, or I'll try this herbal thing, and I literally, I don't know if I have made it 3 weeks at a time before.
Yes, so common. And the other thing too is we're often highly analytical. So our brain's working overtime trying to figure it out. And if we don't see results, then there must be something else wrong that we have to figure out. And we just go and cycle and cycle and cycle. Again, adopting that really passive acceptance, easygoing, gear down lifestyle really makes a world of difference. It's a foreign to us, yes, but it makes a world of difference because the bottom line is, our ambitions and energy are writing checks the body can't cash. It's physically impossible. The body wasn't designed to go as hard as we push it. So we have to learn to live within that limit and be okay with it.
Do you find that when you talk to people and they say this just started a year ago, now that I look back, I go, I always felt like somewhat energetic though and stuff. So I go, it was probably just, I never realized it.
Yeah. Of course,
okay.
We grew up in that, and that becomes our normal. A lot of times I used to hear, man, you walk so fast, or you talk so fast, or how come you do everything so fast? And I thought, this isn't fast.
Right.
I never realized just the speed at which I lived, my life. Even when I was doing recording engineer work, I was so concerned about clients being happy that I would just buzz through mixes and do these things, at 100 miles an hour. And a lot of times the producers would say, wow, slow down, man. And I'm thinking, what's wrong with you? Keep up. I never realized just how fast I lived my life until, anxiety hit. And it's like, oh, okay, I really need to change my lifestyle. I need to adopt a more relaxed approach to life, not always being on 10.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And actually, it makes me feel much better to know that's a normal path because sometimes you go, okay, I can't seem to figure this out.
Yeah. Yeah, and the solution is so simple when we think about it. It really is just resting the body so that it can recover. That's really it. And of course, sleep too complicates it a little bit if our sleep is off because the body's working in the background to keep it stimulated. But as we teach it to be calmer and calmer and calmer, fortunately, our sleep does come back on track. These sleep issues start to fall. We start getting night after night of good sleep. We're starting to feel better overall. There is one caution, however. Once we start to feel better, there's a tendency to go right back into the behaviors that got us there in the first place. So this is why we recommend level 2 recovery, so we can get at those behaviors so that they don't jeopardize the progress we make just by adopting the unhealthy behavior. But anyways, if a person recognizes just on focusing and relaxing, you can do that without addressing level 2. It's harder, but if you just say, okay, I need to make sure I'm relaxing the body sufficiently to keep up with the pace, I'll be fine. So
That was super helpful. I think I just really needed to hear that. So I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're more than welcome. It's a pattern we see so often.
It's good to know because it helps me go, okay, you're on the right track.
Yep. Yeah.